This is to have a roll call. Gail, will you call us in, please?
Brian?
Here.
And Tyler is absent. Kim? Yep. John?
Here.
Deb?
Thank you, Gail. And is there any changes to the agenda? Or I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. And we are into the work session for a portrait of a graduate.
Great. Turn things over to Carrie here very quickly. One of the things that we've had an opportunity to do is we've had an opportunity to, I think it was a week ago today, as a matter of fact, to present to the staff this PowerPoint presentation. And had great feedback, had an opportunity to then with the administrative team that afternoon meet and kind of filter some things out. The overall, just a couple things here, and we'll let you get right into the work session portion of it, is we would like to get your input this afternoon, plus the administrative team's input, as we look at a portrait of a graduate. This is important work, I think. I think we've all agreed to that, and I think it could really make a lot of difference when we're looking at things down the road. A couple things that we've talked about that were suggested would be that we try to get our support staff involved, and I think that we're trying to look at that. And then we've had some conversations administratively, but even trying to get some students involved. And you know, you see some head shaking back there, and I think that they feel that we would get a variety of things here, a variety of people that would be talking about this. So I think I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Carrie.
And we talked that maybe we should move up there because we're going to be participants in this time. So if we want to just take a chair, one of the front row chairs, and move up closer so that we're not working so far apart.
We are doing exactly the same activity that we did with staff. And we're going to do the same thing Thursday night at SIA. And the reason that we decided to do it this way is because we felt it was important to kind of hear the same message, and so that the message would be, you know, filtered a different way. So you want to go to the first slide, Gail? Sorry. There. Okay. Wow. So just think right now, what words do we want people to use when describing a Gilbert student? So just talk in, you know, next with your table partner about what are some words that you would want people to think of when they're talking about our kids.
Critical thinking. Yep. Yes. They're smart about that.
You're copying from Tyler, I heard that.
We're cheating, we're listening.
That was good collaboration, which is one of mine.
Yeah.
We talked about that one.
What else?
Good ideas.
We would want to be problem solvers.
Open-minded, yeah, that's probably
Right, which goes right.
They all kind of
How do you have open-mindedness to sorry, this is now we're drifting. That's what I've really been thinking about. These
So this portrait of the graduate.
where you're capable of talking.
This is where we're going to get to. I think they do that.
Is that open-minded?
I'm sure it'd be like unwanted.
So we would have to.
It can go that way. I think it's
going to have them help us.
Yeah, but it's,
And
it's how you respond. You can still have convictions, but you can figure out how to respond respectfully and listen. And that doesn't mean that you necessarily move from where you're at or it necessarily changes your values. It's just that you're able to listen rather than
So this would be
turn it off. Next topic.
Yeah, open-minded is
all of that.
Right.
And then
I have a lot of character things, but I don't know if they belong in this.
They feed into
this
that.
one. And so as we go,
I like, I think those are the general, like how do we prepare young people, but I don't know if the schools should
Well, that's objective.
Okay, I'm gonna give you guys about 30 more seconds, and then we'll have more time to discuss.
Doesn't.
Oh, I know. I don't know where
students do their
I don't think our district is not
statistics on these two higher students.
Right.
We have a solid unit.
So it's looks
No, I did because now we have.
And I think
Maybe not.
Absolutely.
But to me, the map of what it looks like. So unless it's wrong, you got
All right, I'm gonna bring us all back together. And I'm not gonna have us share out right now, because we're gonna have a time to do that in a little bit. But, being able to hear what some of you were talking about were some of the same exact things we heard on Monday. You wanna go to the next slide? So thinking about what you were just talking about, and looking at these two pictures and thinking of which student will be best prepared to contribute and compete in this global economy now, student A or student B. And you can see the words under student A and student B. As you were discussing, where do you think your words and your thoughts fit?
B.
Oh, it's like, do you want us to really say it?
No, you can say, what do you, John, you right way said B.
Yeah, this is a really unfair binary choice we have right here.
I would agree. I don't think that.
We're in the middle.
I think that.
But if you look, okay, that's the discussion, and that's okay. There's not, I should have said it this way, Tyler, there's not a right or wrong answer.
Right.
There is not a right or wrong answer. Because if you look at student B, you'll see that instead of listing the specific subjects, they have content mastery. So to them, content is not, that it's not that content isn't important, but under student A is just saying the focus is on content. Student B is saying content is the focus along with other areas, other things that are, whether they're whatever we're going to label those. So what I want you to do now is looking at these two different students, now with your partner, does this change your thinking at all?
Brian, did you have a question though?
No, I'll wait.
Okay.
Does it change our thinking on?
Does it change your thinking about what you talked about, the words that you used?
I actually never talked about specifics of content. I mean, I don't think we ever said anything that was in like the student A category.
Okay. Like I said, there is actually not there's not a right or wrong answer to these two pictures at all.
We did expand on student B slightly a bit, right? Like, where does like character component fit into it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, yeah, I don't know whatever that would be, like being charitable or being fair, kind, right? Like, pick one that I think we all agree on.
Well, and are there other words that, as our community, now I didn't pick these words.
Right.
These are just arbitrary words. But would we have different words that we would feel we would want to say, we would want people to speak of about our students? That's the whole key. So, portrait of a graduate. What's that about? So all the work that we have done has really, in one way, maybe has been moving from this point from student A to student B only in the fact that it's not all about content anymore. And the reason being, you all have some form of electronic device in front of you. And we know that our kids today, that is a huge part of who they are and how they can gain information. I mean, there's a lot of things that if I want to know something, I can look it up I actually can look it up on my phone now. I mean, when I was growing up, that was my goodness. I had a dial-up phone. I mean, I don't know if you know what that is, Brian, but
That one of the cords attached to it?
Yeah, and it was all stretched out, Brian, because I would try to pull it into my room, you know, to have a little more privacy, but Anyway.
Can anybody do better than a party line? I remember a
I
party
had that,
line.
we had that too, so yeah. I got in some trouble there, but anyway, whole nother thing. So, but what have we done that has helped to move us to not just be all just about content? Well, we've done AIW, authentic intellectual work, which has really been about digging deeper for students. Where is that higher order thinking for students? CGI, same idea, problem solving. There's not just one right way to get the right answer. We've looked at essential learnings and our teachers have dug down and they have said, okay, we've got all these standards, but what are the gut-wrenching standards that we cannot have our kids leave that grade level without knowing? So you have to prioritize, just like with anything. I mean, if you've got a list of 25 standards in English language arts in your grade level, you've got to prioritize. Because you can't, do we want our kids to be like this, or do we want them to be like this? So we know we are prioritizing those. And we also have to work vertically to say, okay, if the difference in some of these standards is just minuscule, what does that mean? What does that mean in third grade? What does that mean in fourth grade? What does that look like? So we've been doing that work. We've talked about college and career readiness. We've talked about we've done the PLC work. What do all of those initiatives have in common? They're all about student learning. It's all about students. It's not about, now we've done work on that, but it's all about student learning. We took time, and I think, John, you were the one that really guided us down this path of when we took time, staff development time to watch the movie Most Likely to Succeed. We offered it for parents to come in during, and it was too bad the weather was so horrible. But, and why did we do that? Well, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna watch the brief trailer for it. It's just 2 minutes long, just to kind of refresh our memory on what that was.
Is that on it?
Yeah, if you click on it, it should be there.
On that link.
Oh, on the link.
On the,
Got
Is
it.
this a dial-up thing?
Don't you remember Jason just wired this place? Look at
I-
that streaming video.
can you turn your volume on?
50-minute blocks to double with bells and people start to shovel and go and do something else. That's an organizational device, it's not an educational principle.
10 university heads in 1890 said, in 11th grade, everyone should learn chemistry. In senior year, everyone should learn physics. A lot of these subjects are great, but these priorities were dictated 20 or 24 years ago.
The old blue-collar industrial model of education is already gone. We're already living in its wake.
What happens to society when hundreds of millions of people have that aimless, rudderless feeling of, I've been replaced by a very small box? I don't know if there's a solution.
We all learn in different ways. This isn't the way to do it. This is the way that I did it.
If the assignment is you get it back and you crumple it up and throw it in the trash can, that's kind of one student experience. And if the assignment is to produce something that you're going to present to professionals in the field, that's completely changing the whole dynamic.
We are trying to have that type of complexity and curiosity get inculcated in our students.
Saying your parents, all your friends' parents, and a bunch of people you don't know are going to be here to see the work you did. It creates an aspect about authenticity, because we are creating something for an audience.
The things I think in life that give us some of the greatest satisfaction is making something that wasn't there before.
I can't wait for that moment when it does work, and I'm completely done with it. And it's like all leaves. It'll be really crazy to see.
Kids have that feeling, it's transformative. I made this, and everyone's coming to look at it.
Okay, so why now? Well, why now? Because as educators, it is important for us to ask, and board members, I should say, What are the hopes, aspirations, and dreams that our school has for our young people? What are our together goals? And how are we defining them? What are the skills and habits of mind that our children need for success in this rapidly changing and complex world? Because the world that I grew up in as a student is very different than the world that our students today are growing up in. And what are the implications for the learning experiences we provide in our school system? So the exercise that we're going to go through today is just going to help us. We're going to just ask ourselves and our teams these similar questions. And the next step is to ask them as a team, as a board, and as an administrative team together. Are we clear with students what our expectations are across the district? Are we clear as an administrative team and a board as what we think that should be, what that should look like? You can go to the next one. So our students well prepared to contribute and compete in this global and innovative society. We've got those 21st century skills and universal constructs, competencies, mindsets, soft skills, content. Except for content, the items listed above all kind of mean the same thing in some way or another. But do we all define them the same? Well, some of us might say, if you ask that question if we ask that top question, we might say, yeah, our kids are doing great, look at our test scores. But what evidence do we have of that besides that test score? How consistent are we as a district when we say 21st century skills that we all have a complete understanding or definition of what that means for our students pre-K-12? And when we say portrait of a graduate, we're not just saying 11th and 12th grade. We're not just saying juniors and seniors, because that happens way before then. We're building those foundational blocks in preschool. I'll give a real quick example of that. Heather Kearns, preschool teacher, went to do some observations as a model. She's a model teacher this year, and she happened to go into John Davis's, one of his ed classes. And she had 2 or 3 pages of notes that she took of examples of what the skills that he was doing in his classroom, how that related to what she does as a preschool teacher. And the things that how is she laying that? How are they the same? And we can't think that Portrait of a Graduate is about high school. High school is the end goal because that's getting kids ready for that next level and that next experience in life, whatever that is going to be for them. But we're all working for that same thing. It just, the high school is the ones that takes a more celebratory time in that because they're in their building. So, are we using the same? We've all done a lot of work in this area, but we still have a ways to go. Because as a district, we have to help make students make those connections. We can't make assumptions that they understand what that means or that we all have the same understanding of that. We have to use the same language. For example, do we all feel each soft skill has the same level of urgency? I don't know. I can think something's really important, but that doesn't mean that Brian is going to have the same feeling.
That's right. That's right.
No, but it's,
yeah.
So we have to say as a district of what is important to us. Instead of having each teacher on their own make that decision of what that hierarchy should be in their classroom, we need to dig in together and we need to do this work and we need to define it. Now, we can't do all that in 40 minutes, but we can start having the dialogue of what these important words are, of when we went back to what are those words are that you want people, that you feel, that you want people to think of when they think of our graduates, or even on the other end, something that if our kids leave us and they don't have that, that's like shame on us. Because you know what? That's part of what we should be doing for our kids. And we've all been part of conversations when we've talked to outside, whether it's outside employers or we've talked to higher ed, and we've heard the skills that students, I don't mean Gilbert students, but I mean students in general are lacking. But if we know that, then we need to pull our boots, pull up and say, okay, what are we going to do about it? So that's where we're starting here. And the portrait of a graduate is the beginning of that work. So I'm jumping ahead. I did this when we did this. So we're gonna show a quick, and when we're doing this, we're not thinking building specific, we're just thinking whole child in general. We're gonna watch one more quick little video. It's just literally 2 minutes long. Now is when we get to start the activity, the actual work. So what we're going to do is we're going to take just approximately 3 to 5 minutes, and everybody's going to get a sticky note and a pen. And now what you're going to do is just write. And then right now is the goal is to get individual ideas. And that's what this whole, the whole activity today is about, individual ideas. We're not going to come to consensus. We don't have to sway anybody to our way of thinking. But right now, individually, write words that speak to you on what you, oh, I wish I didn't copy that. Write the words that you feel are meaningful, that you want our kids to walk away.
Can we use this list that we came up with?
You can use that list and you can add to it. But put your words on individual sticky notes.
So 1 word per note.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
And not phrases, words.
Oh.
I know.
Like
So it can't be
words?
like 2 words?
Then put a hyphen.
Then put a hyphen.
Rule breaker
It's
is
like
one of mine.
self-confident.
Gotcha.
I already just
Oh, like, that's okay. Say
Mhm.
that. Something like that. Okay. I'll start following that.
No, we want, Kim, every word that you think is important. We don't want you to split.
Yeah.
Because we want to see it come through
Oh,
as much
gotcha.
as possible.
So if you both came up with the same word, you both write that word
Okay,
down.
gotcha. My pen's
So you don't get to share the load here.
Yeah, you got it. Everybody's got to do their own words.
Portrait of a graduate, word, or the whole system. I mean, what?
So like, as I heard you guys talking, I heard open-mindedness, I heard collaboration, I heard communication.
Yeah.
Any of those words.
Gilbert students.
In the context of all Gilbert students,
Yes.
a portrait of a graduate kind of points me towards
They're
what
kind
they
of
look
both.
like.
What are the skills that we want to definitely make sure that they're working on K-12 that they'll have after they leave?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there may be versions of the same word, thinking more elementary.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a little more difficult to find back to the young man's with portrait of a graduate.
It is hard sometimes, yeah.
Okay, so for all of our hyphen words. Oh, you. Okay. I did. We're supposed to duplicate it?
We have to split you guys up.
No, I'm just thinking we should have thought independently and then collaborate.
We just
rather than
collaborated
collaborating
well,
and then
and so
trying to
we were gonna have
separate
basically
that.
the same thing.
If you thought group thought was good. And group thought is hard to like individualize.
We actually
Well,
worked.
in my classroom, they'd split you up. That's how they do it.
Well, you're fine.
It was A, but.
I might
Yours
have to
A.
skip.
You had an A room.
That was me in that picture.
Oh, boy. Oh, shit.
This little like sticky on one side and then flips to the other side. No, I don't care with
I
this.
don't like those kind.
Well, that's a really, that was the first time I heard that. Wrote that down, that was a bad one.
Okay, I'm gonna give you about another minute or so to kind of, no, that's okay. And the thing is about this, as we're working together, you can continue to add a word if you are, as you're talking, you're like, oh, I like that word, you can add it. We're not gonna take words away today.
I'm really using hyphens to get my one word in.
New hyphenated.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do now is we're going to take our sticky notes and we're gonna come, bring your sticky notes and we're just gonna come on the counter and we're gonna put them up and we're gonna see, we're gonna do your thing. And then we're gonna just kind of put them up and we're gonna see if we can see some like ones, and if we see like ones, we're gonna put them together. And then from there, we'll start grouping them into like groups.
You want us to just?
Yeah, I want you to come, no, we're all
We're
gonna
gonna
kind
figure
of,
out how we do
yeah,
it, how we do
yeah,
it.
we're just gonna do it together.
I should have written three.
I just freaking
Worry wart. Anti-worry wart.
I just can't do that.
Carrie, you want us to try to organize them? Like if you see one that somebody else has put yours with theirs?
Yeah, if you see one that's like yours, put it, if you see one that's like yours, put it with theirs, or put it next to it, or on top of it.
Good job. Oh, here. Can I use that same? Oops, I think I did mine on that one. I did mine on that one. I lost one of mine. I had.
Do you know if John left you any files when we initially activated these?
Sorry.
For some reason, when I just powered this up, it's asking for this.
That's because we get
Years
them.
ago.
Well, I had
I'm not sure. I don't know if you have a file that I can. Because I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that would be my
I don't know.
email.
I believe they were all set up with Gilbert or Gilbert email, and that's how you activate it, because the Gilbert, well,
We're gonna have
Yeah,
this.
it's like, big weather some stuff,
you
man.
may have said, I know I use this one.
I've just always.
Yeah, what is that? Like, it's like
So it might be
not just-
the Gilbert.
Resilient.
Yeah, resilient, that's a great word.
And then it takes it locked out.
Well, that's kind of where I am right now. It's requiring.
Is open-minded the same as flexible?
I have to look and.
You have
Otherwise, I'll check with Jason, he might have files.
Yeah, or maybe you can just
Sorry, John.
restart it or whatever.
What? I'm getting too specific on some things. This is a word thing.
We didn't have sticky notes when I was.
Hard start or a hard.
Yeah.
The activation lock is the.
Yeah. And it was successful, it locked me out.
I'll check it out.
Oh, there's another creative. So when I say bold, bold goes. Resilient is such a great word.
See, ones everybody got right, well, somebody got that one right.
It was in,
Got that going.
communications room.
Works pretty cool.
So you only use it if you want to use it. And when you
Saw
take
one
your,
there.
DOS,
Yeah.
quickly,
We do.
that's what
Risk taker.
but nobody actually uses it.
And the go have.
And everybody.
Where's hopeful? Anyone have hopeful? Anything that's like that?
We didn't have anything.
No,
So
happy.
like there was time I took my entire
Yeah, for
web article and I hit the wrong button and moved everything. Because I didn't move that screen. It's so funny.
We have a bunch like engaged, there's this community programs.
Oh, yeah, I got some of those.
Engaging, we have some.
Where's the, is there a self-confidence? Confidence? I put comfortable, so I think they're pretty close. Oh, I also read confident, great word.
Communicative. It's about leaders.
Minded, service-minded, action-minded.
Is that?
About
that was
leaders.
mine, so probably.
I got one of those, so you
He
got
types
that
so
one
well
right.
that I'm just,
Oh,
Mine
man.
on top of yours.
Globally fluent, that's such a fancy word. I regret writing it. Oh, where did Did that go? Yeah.
I've never
Sure did.
have an
Oh,
actor.
I'm sorry. I also have patience.
Writing down really fast.
Yeah.
It's close to the
The self-reliance, I probably go on.
There's gotta be some curious somewhere on here.
Do you want me to start pulling them?
Engaged, you get that one.
Oh, confident, I should have.
Oh, adapter.
I think comfortable and confident. Oh, there's multiple confident.
Well-rounded. Is there anything in the, I'm well-rounded, right?
Are you seeing anything close to excellence, you guys?
Huh?
Did anybody else get the right answer on?
Excellent.
Oh, why didn't we just do this now in that order? Oh.
You're able to come.
This is smart. Creative and curious, are these close?
Don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. No, just do it like this and don't take the sticky notes. Don't worry about it. Just, you've already started.
You don't have to work at that,
I
Brian.
think that's risk, well, I think it's risk taker.
We've got We've got something that we're doing.
Civic minded, I think that's what it is.
Look at all those numbers. You should have given us a little bit of time.
No, absolutely not.
Didn't you hear what she said? This
I
is about
know.
Social.
We have to do that one.
Here's communication up
like
there.
what I just said was realized.
Community involvement.
Anybody team, we're all independent.
Oh, that's a good one. Does that fit with like communication?
Communication over there, Stacy.
I do not have communication.
Oh. Dreaming, big thinkers, very good.
Vic, did you have one else?
Here's innovative.
Just some
Gritty, oh, it's over here.
She said Vic.
You write tough guy?
I put resilient.
Oh, no, resilience is very good.
I just started to put mine up there and
Got a good response.
encourager.
And some of them are just gonna be alone.
Soft.
Just listen.
I hope you don't get writer's crap tonight.
A full slate here.
I know.
Yeah, we got a bunch of resilience up here.
It looks like
Oh, that's a great word as well.
It doesn't look that way, Slapping.
He's going to get his
watching the work.
pad.
No.
I am. I mean, just like I'm not good. I think the ideas I have in my brain are things like, oh, these word choices are so good.
It's a variety of choices.
None
None of us are really on the scale.
What is the word? Resilience. So it's respectful though.
I wasn't even close, but I thought, well, as long as I get it on a piece of paper.
Because I recently looked at
You could have said bounce back, but you could only use one word, right?
Well, I were driving that north.
Oh, bad.
We were trying to communicate.
Everybody was kind of.
So as you, Mike is gonna put this in a document for us, and we're gonna show you kind of the words that pop out, the ones that we said the most, or that you came up with the most, but what, as you were looking at the words, oh, you're fine, for goodness sakes. As you were looking at the words, what were some things that came to your mind?
You all have a great vocabulary.
Okay.
Well, there are a lot of character in I don't know.
Soft skills type?
Soft skills, exactly.
Core values.
There's some core values.
I noticed, not necessarily the words that I was writing down, but when I was looking at what other people wrote, I agreed with what they wrote down, and I just realized, wow, I think I took that for granted. But it's probably important that we don't take them, that we, to your point, we have to say that they're important and identify them as important in order to come to an agreement.
They're adjectives that describe engaged people.
Yeah.
So while they're finishing up this, I know, Amy, do you want to, you work with your teachers. Do you want to share, is there anything that I maybe should have, that I didn't, we'll share out the wordles, or the worded out from each group, but from your perspective, is there anything else that we could engage in conversation-wise? Okay. You want to go to the next slide, Gail? All right. Here is, these are the words. I'm going to show you each building.
Which one is this?
This is the elementaries. These are the words the elementary came up with. Now, as you look at this, the words that are bigger are the ones that were said more. So every time a word was put into the program, so kind was obviously a word that the elementary felt was very important. So I'm just going to give you some time to kind of, peruse that.
And we can still add or not.
If you want to, you can still add. No, Don't worry.
I'm like cheating. I don't want to cheat like stealing.
Now, I want to go to the intermediate. We go to the next slide.
This is really cool, because not only, it's like grouping similar terms as well.
Yes. So now you can see the words that popped up that came up for the elementary, or for the intermediate building. And you can see that big word problem solver was a big word for staff. And problem solver was also on the elementary too. Kind is here also. It's not quite as big, but it's still an important word. So look for the, once again, look for the words that you see that maybe are similar to words that you had.
And are these the cleaned up versions, or this is the initial?
This is the initial. Now we didn't.
Because these are kind of, a lot of them are smaller sizes, that mean that that's how it diverse, like.
So someone said
None of
great.
them really stuck out as
Yes.
high.
Great. Oh, someone has lifelong learner non-hyphenated down there.
You want to go to the next one? Here's middle school. You can see growth mindset. You can see the problem solving again.
Curious. Dreamer.
Everything I do. Yeah, advocate, I love that.
We're getting closer to right.
So then you can think like when you hear like, okay, there's happy. Happy's bigger. So when you start seeing words that are very similar, curious, dreamers, for example, kind of similar words, that's when the next step will be taking those similar words and thinking, okay, what is a word that encompasses those words when we see the bigger words? And then last but not least, the high school. And these are all the words from the high school. Is there anything that you notice
well read.
is not, was there anything that you noticed was not included?
Like,
that you're surprised at?
I mean, at least in the big words, the larger print words, I didn't see like content, a lot of things about content, math or science or, something like that.
No.
Where are I see a lot of sort of like others-mindedness. Where's like confidence? That never kind of
I think I just saw it. No, I didn't.
Surfaced up to kind of like the bigger words, which I'm curious about that.
Confident.
Oh, you said confident, didn't
Oh,
you?
confidence.
Yeah,
That's what I was
sorry.
thinking too.
Competent or confident?
Confident.
Confident, like I'm confident in what I'm doing?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a good question. I don't know. If I'm just as I'm maybe like, I see the word gritty, I see the word moxie. Some of those, we could have words that are all similar to that, but we just didn't name it that. I guess I go to that word moxie because I'm like, I really thought that's a good word.
I like that word a lot.
Hardworking showed up big in several of them. Reached out.
Engaged, empathetic.
Responsible, I don't know that I saw that on the earlier pages.
And remember, these are just, this is the beginning of that.
Sense of humor.
So,
That was great.
what we're going to do is, Mike, I think what I'm going to do is just have you real quick plug into, so we can just show that up there real quick.
It's underneath.
That's what you were doing.
Hold on, I gotta get
It's all the check marks.
I gotta get one. 65 out of 68, that's pretty good.
You can just
I will say that they took liberties with the multiple words, just squishing them all together. But I do really like that. I like that.
Just pull that one out.
I wrote rule breakers just for that reason.
Yeah.
And then what we've done is Mike has so nicely typed all of that so you can now see what your words, how do your words play out.
It's good typing, put that in there.
Yes, sir.
That used to be important in 1976.
Good with your thumbs. Now.
A biker.
But I tell you, guess what? Most important class will be the next one.
Biker or elite? Yeah. Oh, biker or elite?
I know, I was like, why would I? That's every day. Well, this before personal computers.
Yeah.
Why is it saying?
And literally.
Did you get source?
These boxes that they.
Oh, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, that's okay.
Where were you when you did that?
All right. Well, there we go. Now there's your words.
Oh, cool.
Now, we are also collecting these, and I mean, this is a great visual to see, but we're also collecting them through a spreadsheet too. So we're not just collecting in this way. I mean, we have you know.
I'd be interested if you smudge.
And we
them
will.
all together.
We will be doing that.
Well, I'll be honest, if you guys had groups put together that were like, chances are we said ×3, you know, so right first one.
Yeah.
But do you see some of the same similar words? And that's why we felt it was important to go through the same type of activity. Each group to go through that.
Arrogant. You'll have to explain that. Is that like a confidence one? Is that what you're thinking of, or what were you thinking?
I think it's a confidence that produces actions beyond what maybe a rational mind would do.
Yeah.
And
I'd have to have a conversation or have negative connotations with arrogant.
Oh, I think everything in there has a bright and a dark side to it.
Well, now you're
Except for
thinking way
Gilbert.
too old.
Except for Gilbert, that's
But I think there's a time. I think arrogance is maybe that little extra energy sometimes to get that ball over the hill.
And I think arrogance is without regard to others.
But I think the cool part is
Could
like,
be.
Yeah.
I think there's like the themes are similar, right?
I think that is exactly right. What we have to do next, after we are done compiling different groups, is then we look for patterns. We look for similarities, and we look for those words and those groups of words that stick out. And then we come back and we say, okay, this is what we're seeing. And then we come back to you and we say, okay, this is what we're seeing. What do you think of this? And then we finally, and I'm going to show you what some other districts have gone down this road and what work they have done, and then I'll show you how they narrowed theirs down to. But it has to be about us. We can't, I purposely didn't want to show you somebody else's work because it has to be who we are, not who somebody else is. We aren't trying to be somebody else. It has to be our Gilbert kids.
How do we make sure we're not just saying things that are comfortable to us, and that we're moving into a space that's aspirational or even beyond what we maybe a little scary?
I think that's good.
I'm sorry, that's not a challenge. I'm
And
just
I
saying,
liked-
in this exercise.
I had watched that video the other day again after we showed it, and we haven't had a chance to talk about this yet. But I like maybe even take a step further now there's their staff, because one of the questions that posed was, what do you need to do as a teacher? And do those same kind of sticky note things like, here's what we want our students to be, but how am I, as an employee, whether I'm an associate bus driver or teacher, gonna get the kids there? What am I gonna do?
I think that's a good question. Can I talk about this, and then I think that's the next, as we look at where are we gonna go from here, that's a good thing. So we've got 3 different examples up here of schools that have gone down this road and already done this work. The one that looks like a compass is a school in New York. The one in the middle is Jefferson County in Colorado, and the pillar one on the end is Van Meter in Iowa. You can see their words, some of them are very different, but it's the words that speak to their community. For example, if you look at the middle, Jefferson County, they felt content mastery was important to them. I mean, so they didn't put different specific content words, but they've got content mastery because that was important to their community for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know, I didn't do the work with them, so I don't know why, but that's an word that's important to them. Civic and global engagement, communication. So you can, here you've got layers of words. You've got contributing, competent, courageous, conscientious, communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and then you've got intellectually prepared, civically engaged, personally responsible. So you've got layers. Now, I don't know personally if there's a specific reason for those layers. I don't know, but that's what they're, so the first step is figuring out what is important to us. What do we want our graduates? What are those things that we're going to say, you know what? These are the things that our kids have to be successful out in the workforce, whatever they're going to do, in higher ed, wherever they're going, but in their adulthood life. After we name these words, then we're going to have to come up with what's that graphic that we want to have us, say what does that mean to us. From there, then we have to, along with that piece, then we have to define those words. We all have to have the same definition of what that word means. Then we have to say, from there, and this is where it's going to take time to do this work. What does that look like in preschool, and what does that look like as a senior? Because all of these words here, agility and adaptability, they're naming that in all their grade levels. And that's what our goal should be as to what that looks like across the board for a graduate. And then we have to say what it looks like. Then we're going to say, we have to tell kids, how do you know you're successful at it? We have to give them feedback on that. So this is the beginning of that work, and that's why we wanted to start it now, so that our hope is that we can get this part done. And so when we start the school year off, we know what our words are, and our professional development will all focus on, not all, but a chunk of our district PD will focus, or professional learning, I would rather call it professional learning, on defining those words and then beginning that grade span work of what does that look like, and then how will we know that students are successful, and then how will we give that feedback to kids?
Brian, you brought up, these words, how do we get past safe words? I don't think these words are safe, and I was telling Carrie, and we hadn't had this conversation before, that 14 years ago when I was a district curriculum director, there was a huge initiative called High School Reform, and it's the same conversation. So it's not a super safe thing to say that actually we're going to be responsible for kids being communicators, collaborators, and things. I mean, educators have now sat on this work that they started 14 years ago. So I think
that's interesting to hear. The follow-up, I appreciate that, and I think, like, do we have the honesty then to call out when we aren't hitting these benchmarks? You know what I mean?
Well, and Amy talked about some of those questions. Same thing. When we were kind of done and we sort of grouped our words and things, I said, okay, now show me where you explicitly teach that.
And that's the other work that we have to do. Because it's one thing if I say, oh, I do that. We do that every day, but do we really teach kids that, and do we give them feedback on it, or do we just say you're not doing that?
Right. Because I appreciate today's exercise, and then we're grouping words, and then we're kind of grouping concepts, and then we're getting alignment. As long as we're not making the assumption that, well, that's what we agree it should look like, and then we're going to assess whether we're there, making sure we're not making an assumption that our teachers, our staff doesn't know how to get us there, which is maybe where your question was going. I mean, that's the most important thing, right? And maybe that's involved in
we have to do that work,
right?
Because we can't make assumptions that you and I have the same understanding of creativity. If that's something that's really important to us, what does that mean? What does that look like for Gilbert? And how are our kids going to know they're successful at it? I know that we just have one quick, if you do Portrait of a Graduate, this is a school district in Arizona that has gone through this work, and this is their video of their Portrait of a Graduate and the work that they've done.
Oh, well,
sorry,
maybe not. Supported video.
Okay, never mind. I'll send it to you guys.
Something that we talked about with Carrie a couple weeks ago is Deb and I
have been talking a lot about this, and we felt even it has to go beyond in the buildings. It has to go to what are our parents' definitions of success, and what is our definition, and even out into the patrons who no longer have students, right? Because we count on them. We counted on them last Tuesday to reinforce what we're trying to accomplish with our kids. And so this has the potential to really go so far beyond where we are today with whole community engagement.
Well, to piggyback off that, I think we have to do a good job of talking about that, because some of our older community members would think we should be student A.
Oh, absolutely.
And so when we're doing this work, why is this work important? And why are we doing it? I think is important also.
So this is a tremendous amount of work, right? I mean, there's a lot of time invested in. We're always at the board trying to be very cautious not to have expectations for more time. But if we're going to make this investment, does this tie back to our mission and vision? I mean, in other words, to me, this goes much farther than any dialogue that we've had or attempted work session at the board level, at least in my 6 years, to revisit that. And this maybe not spot on, but it's pretty darn close to saying, well, now we've got maybe even deeper alignment with what's our vision and mission statement for the district, such as when we're getting farther into this, we revisit just going ahead and modifying that or completely changing it.
I would recommend that that's something that we do start doing that in the fall, that we just, because if those are important to us, what we come up with, I keep pointing up there, whatever we come up with through this work, those should be incorporated into our mission.
Well, and ultimately, it's the foundation of our strategic plan moving forward.
Exactly.
You know,
Right.
This is really the
building
center that
buildings
we
or
can
doing
build on.
initiatives that don't fit within what we come up with as our pillars of.
People's goals are in line with
Yeah,
this. Their
everything should be
development
around
is in
what-
line with
around that.
supporting all of this. One thing that I just wanted to say is, I know we were joking about it too, about, no, now we've got the right answer here. But this is so important that this be a district-wide exercise, and that this be something that we all own. This isn't something that the administrators hand down or that the board hands down or something, but this is really organically grown, right? And something that is us, essentially us.
Well,
So,
and
I know we were joking
no,
about
but we
it.
had this conversation earlier, and you alluded to this in the fact that these words go to everybody. And it's like, how does that relate to me in my role? How does that relate to administrators? How do they relate to board members? How do they relate to every single bus driver, a cook, everybody, custodians, teachers, everybody? Because if we believe that, they should relate to all of us. Anyway, thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
So I will send out that so you guys can see it all compiled together.
Cool, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. We'll start our budget hearing. You need a roll call on that, Gail?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
We'll
And
just
I'll
open up at 6 o'clock.
entertain a motion to approve the agenda. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the proposed budget for 2018 and 2019?
I'm sure that's what everybody came for.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We stand adjourned. And entertain a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Sorry, Deb.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. And we will bump the MS Genius Hour to the front of the list.
Gail, you have that?
I certainly do.
I'm excited about this.
So we thought, I started out this fall sharing with the board a little bit about our Tiger Time, how we reimagined that. One of the choices that kids have are Genius Hour. So I have a couple teachers that have been in Genius Hour throughout the year. just going to give you a kind of an overview of what that's looked like, and then I have a couple kids that are here to share with you some of the things that they did. We have several projects over the course of the year, and the teachers actually have some videos. The kids had to do a little flip grid, so we have videos of the kids talking about their different projects, but we just picked a couple to highlight for you, and so you're free to ask some questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Jess Krause, who's our 7th grade science, and Amanda Ostrom, who's our 8th grade science. So.
All right, so we're really excited. We did Genius Hour this was my first experience with Genius Hour and our first middle school wide experience with Genius Hour. So with the MTSS, we needed to meet the needs of students who needed a targeted intervention, but the majority of our students don't need that targeted intervention. So Mr. Danielson and Mr. Billings and a lot of people thought about how to make sure the kids that needed that intervention were getting their needs met, but we weren't taking them out of classes or they weren't missing opportunities. So our Tiger Time kind of became our answer to that. So I would say is that 80 to 85% of our population isn't in a targeted intervention. And so they got some choices on how they were going to spend their Tiger Time 3 days a week. Our MTSS groups meet on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursdays, and they meet 26 minutes on those days. And we meet for 8 weeks, so we're going to get through 4 cycles this first year. And Genius Hour, after our first cycle, proved to be a very popular option. Students really wanted to do that a lot. We averaged, like I said, 118 kids over our 4 cycles. I think our first one was pretty popular. I worked with one student who saw me the first, the second, and the 3rd cycle, so that some kids were really opting into that a lot.
And I should probably note, so we have about 385 kids in middle school, so we're on our 4th cycle, the last cycle now, so the average has been 118 out of the 385, so it's served a significant number of kids.
Okay. Next slide, please. I think the real good place to start with Genius Hour was to ask kids questions. So the 4 teachers that started, was there 4 of us in the meeting or 5?
I think there was 5.
5. The 5 of us who did the first cycle of Genius Hour started by meeting right when school started and thinking about how with Genius Hour, this is an idea that is not ours at all, but how could we adapt it to meet our needs and our schedule. We met with Mr. Hales, who does a lot of Genius Hour at the elementary level, and he gave us some ideas, and then we adapted it to what could meet our needs. And we thought the most important thing to do was to start with questions. Because one of the things about Genius Hour that kids really have to get used to is they guide the learning. They pick the topic, and in the first cycle, what I noticed some students struggled with was just that lack of, well, what's my end product supposed to be? And so we talked just about questions. What are you passionate about? I started with my kids. We knew about a week ahead of time who our kids were going to be. I sent an email to them with just these questions. Said, I want you to think about these questions for the next 5 days. I want you to talk to your parents about it and think about what are you passionate about? What do you really want to make a difference? If they could, I think that second question, if you could learn or read about anything in the world, what would that be? That's a hard question to ask anyone, and middle schoolers really had to take some time with that. I know, Ms. Ostrom, your guide was about solving a problem a lot. You referred to that.
Mm-hmm. So we were looking for what sort of problem can we solve? How do your interests help you solve a problem in our society? And some of them really ran with that, and some of them went back to the interest thing and just focused on that. But we tried to push both options.
And then our first day, we kind of watched some videos, talked about inspirations, talked about the Genius Hour philosophy. And then we really had to talk about thick versus thin questions. And we found this graphic that really helped kids. We talked about it's not something you already know about. It's not something that you can go onto a search engine and type and you can find lots of resources to answer your question. And this thick versus thin questions was something that I spent several days on with my kids, and I know the other teachers did too, to get rid of those who, what, where, when questions and really think about what's a problem that I can go more in depth in, that I can back up with research, that I can gather evidence about. And we did this, and once we did our thick and thin questions, then we had an organizer. The kids kind of wrote a plan, and then we asked them to share that not only with us, but then with their parents, so the parents can be having an idea, asking some questions.
So next slide. We really help them figure out that developing a plan, step by step. What are you going to do in this class? And that was tough for a lot of them to figure out, oh, I have to come up with this. The teacher isn't giving me step by step how to solve this problem or step by step how to do my project. They had to come up with that. So there are kind of 3 things that we focused on. The materials I need are, and for some of them, it was a little material heavy. We have one that will show you a material heavy one. And others were things that they could do without materials completely. Online campaigns, things like that without materials. And how much will those materials cost me? So we currently don't have a budget for Genius Hour supplies, so the students would have to talk to parents and say, if I'm going to buy this, either I'm going to buy it myself or my parents are going to help me buy it, how much is it going to be overall to accomplish my goal? And then after we kind of got that set in place, emailed parents, figured out what we needed to do, we, if we can go on to the next slide, Gail, thank you. We had weekly reflections, weekly checkups with them. So after those 3 days, on that Thursday, they would write, my accomplishments this week were step by step what they did, where I'm going next week, and the adjustments I need to make. And I in my class, I don't know about you, really focused on that last part, the adjustments I need to make. Making that new plan for the next week. What do I need to do on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday next week to get to my goal overall? And how can I change what I've done this week to make it even better next week? So each student did a weekly reflection, and we would try to check up on each student to make sure that they were on track to complete a project in the time allotted. And I don't know if any student ever finished way ahead of time. I didn't experience that, but maybe since. We've done pretty well with filling the time and expanding on things if we need to, or cutting things back a little bit if need to as well.
And I would say that that weekly reflection was really important. And I had students that came up at the end of the 8 weeks and said, this is what I accomplished. Did I answer my driving question? Not yet. And really, I think, and I always ask in their final presentations to think about what did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about your driving question? And I would say first round, maybe 15% of my kids said, I learned that I do not manage my time very well. So I think that's a good learning moment. Yes.
Because it was so student driven, they got to manage their time, and it was good that they could reflect on that.
Yeah. Okay. And then one thing that I experienced in our first round, we really struggled with, well, what would our final product be, and how would we reach an audience? And with it only being 8 weeks, and the kids kind of felt like a presentation would be a good way to do that, but at the end of our first cycle, we had to dedicate so much time in class to them doing the presentations that we felt like we needed to rework that. So Mrs. Sickles and I, she's a 6th grade social studies teacher, got together and decided instead of doing these group presentations to Genius Hour, we would do Screencast. And Screencastify is just a Google app add-on, and I use it in my teaching a lot, and I thought that we could use that with the students, and they just sit in front of their Chromebooks and they go through, if they have slides or they have something, they just talk about their presentation. They have the option, I encouraged mine to use it, but not all of them did, to put like a little FaceTime video in the bottom screen so they could be seen in the video. And then they took that and we compiled those all onto a website so that we could potentially reach a larger audience. And if we played those in class, it was kind of quicker to just click play and have those videos ready to go. And then if we ran out of time, then that was okay too. And to give you a little idea of what we have some of our standout presentations and students to come in and talk about the time they spend in Genius Hour. So I think we'll start with Aiden.
Do you need help carrying it? Or? All right. So Aiden, was this your third time doing Genius Hour?
This is, this was my second time doing this one.
Second time, okay.
And I built a fully functioning PC, and I budgeted by myself. I had to save up for a while to build it, but I think it was all worth it. I used the time wisely, and The first time I did art, and then this time I did computer, because I've always been wanting to do that with Dad. And so he helped me through the process, and I also did all the research by myself.
Any big learning moments?
Yes, I learned a lot about computer engineering and what it takes to build a PC and what goes into it. I learned how expensive it was too.
What about the cryptocurrency?
Oh yeah, so all the stuff in my PC is sort of expensive, especially graphics cards, because there's this thing called Bitcoin, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it makes GPU prices of graphics cards. That thing in the bottom right there, they cost outrageously amount of money right now, because a while ago, a top-of-the-line GTX 1080 graphics card cost around $800, now it's $1,400. So I had to sacrifice a little bit of processing power for a good, it's still a good graphics card, but for what I had to spend.
Do you guys have any questions for Aiden and his computer? We have a couple more students to share with you. I mean, this is a student who on his own was interested in it and completely took it on and owned it and built his own computer, which I think is pretty awesome. So,
What applications will you run off of it?
I can use this to play games. I'm probably going to use it for run stuff during college, because this PC I'm probably going to last and maybe upgrade a couple times once I get a job. Not only that, I can use the knowledge I have to probably get a job in the future for it.
Congratulations.
So a lot of the kids built things. That was one of the things they did, but a lot of them solved problems. And so Alyssa's going to share with you something I thought was pretty interesting. Alyssa Clark's a 7th grader with us, and she did a kind of a different direction, but I thought pretty interesting.
Alright, so for my Genius Hour project, I did a presentation on sugar, and so in this I really included the effects that sugar has on the body and how it affects us long term, but also I created a diet for a week that has no sugar. So this was this was my second rotation of Genius Hour, but in my first one I did how food affects our brains, and sugar was constantly coming up in my research, so this really led into my second project. So I learned a lot from this. So I didn't realize how long-term sugar affected us and how many things it did affect, like our pancreas and kidneys. So I also learned a lot about the difference between natural and processed sugars. Like, for example, when natural sugars, when our body digests it, it turns into fructose, which our bodies can use, but when it's processed, we can't do that. So when creating this diet, I didn't realize how many things had sugar. Almost every processed thing has sugar. And so really a lot of the main foods I ate were eggs and salmon. So I did this diet week. So I thought it wouldn't have such an effect on me as it did because I'm a relatively healthy eater. For example, I was craving sugar a lot. And although there were so many positive effects, like reduced acne, things like workouts were harder because my carb intake was a lot lower. And like I said before, some of the main foods I ate were salmon, eggs, and greens. But for many reasons, this diet was not sustainable because for starters, you need sugar, and there's a lot of things that you need that have sugar in it, like avocados, fruit, and like things like peas. Those kind of vegetables have sugar too. So, and also I kind of ate relatively the same thing every day, like sugar-free salads. I made protein muffins that were sugar-free, and eggs. So it was also really hard and stressful. Just again, cravings were really hard, and also just trying to find stuff without sugar. Also, I had to really get out of the habit of whenever I was hungry, just going to the fridge and grabbing something to eat. So this project, again, made me read a lot of labels. So now when I go to eat food, even though I'm off the diet, I know which stuff has a lot of sugar. So it's really affected me in the long run, and it's paying off today.
Do you guys have any questions for Alyssa?
Were you grumpy without sugar?
Maybe that's a better one for her parents.
I just couldn't believe she could do it. I mean, we were with her on it, and yeah, it's amazing how much stuff has sugar.
Wait, the whole family did it?
Oh, no.
Oh.
I was cheering off the sideline.
Oh, that's sugar. Hold on, I'll take this.
But you said the first time you said that you did this and you were looking just at the effects of food on the brain, and then you dove deeper into sugar. So, like, do you think there's still more questions that you have, or? I mean, it sounds like these are all things that just like keep going, right? They're not just 8 weeks and you're done. Right?
Yeah, because like I would really like to go into when sugar affects our pancreas and kidneys, what exactly that affects and how long term, and what can do more long term.
Hey, let us know. Could you let us know?
Or maybe don't.
Just a minute.
Well,
What am I looking
ignorance.
for? What am I looking for here? Yeah.
So last student we have here tonight is Bailey Hill. Bailey is an 8th grader with us. And Bailey also investigated a problem, but you know, Alyssa's a little more, you know, personal responsibility issue, right? The things that are in my life. Bailey's is a little bit bigger.
Yeah, like I said, like he said, my name is Bailey, and I did my project on sexual assault and rape and just what it is and how it affects everyone and just how it's a really big problem in the world. I looked at a lot of like statistics and things like that, and I found most of my information from an organization called RAIN, which is one of the largest organizations in the U.S. about it. And I just did a presentation because there wasn't really anything I personally could do. But this topic has led me to my next Genius Hour project, which I did was Denim Day. And that's a project that I got approved to have the 8th grade participate in. And it's kind of, April is National Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So I was looking at some things and I found that there's actually like a day for this. And then that led to Denim Day, which was just where everyone can wear denim as a visible sign of protest and to raise awareness through public education. And yeah, so.
What day is that?
April 25th, a Wednesday, I believe.
So she's been working with Mrs. Wilson, the school counselor at the middle school, to get that planned and coordinated. That was one of the outcomes of her project was, you know, so what can we do? And it's about getting information out to the students. I believe they're also going to have, Bailey, are you having, at one point, we were going to have people come in from assault and do like a lunch sessions where kids could go and learn more? Is that access?
We have one speaker, I believe, coming in. So the students can come during lunch and recess to, I believe, Mrs. Ostrom's room. And it's just so they can get some information behind it too, because I realized it's a more serious thing than I thought it was, and it's very prominent. 1 in 6 women will experience sexual assault and rape in their lifetime, and 1 in 33 men will experience it in their lifetime. And oftentimes the offender will get away with it, because one other thing I looked at was, I believe, out of every 1,000, only 7 will actually like stay in jail for a while, which was something very awful. And I think it was somewhere around 300 that don't even get that get reported out of 1,000. Yeah. And also one thing I also learned that was marital sexual assaults was something that didn't become very prominent and was reported until I want to say 1979, I think was one of the first cases reported. So yeah, I just learned more about how it's actually a problem and that things can be helped by just raising awareness about it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Questions for Bailey?
That's amazing.
So knowing where we're at in our district with information education, I mean, did you look at our curriculum and our situation to say, here's areas where we can make improvements on this issue? From an education standpoint?
That was part of the conversation with Mrs. Wilson, because Mrs. Wilson and I talked about where would be an appropriate place to put this, and it's a sensitive topic and difficult at the middle school level. I don't know that there's been conversations about how, you know, looking at the high school, it was more focused on us. That's why we decided to do the lunch and learn option, where kids could voluntarily go in and get more information if they wanted to, but it wasn't forced on them if they weren't ready for it or you know, didn't feel it was necessary or needed at the time. So.
And I believe at one point the high school had a speaker for human trafficking at one point, I think. Mrs. Wilson said, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. Those were wonderful presentations.
So we wanted to just basically give you a sense of, you know, we had students that made things. We had students that focused on a personal problem. We had students that focused on bigger, you know, more global problems. And we really thought coming into this that it could be a lot of babysitting and like, you know, whipping the mule to get it going kind of thing. And there was some of that maybe. But the kids really took it on and owned it and had worked hard. And sometimes they got to the end of the weeks and they didn't have anything to show for it. And they still would reflect, you know, and talk about what they learned. And maybe the bite of the apple was too big. Maybe they just didn't use their time well, you know, but that was still important and valuable for them as well, is to learn that, you know, gosh, here at the end of the 8 weeks, everyone's got something and I don't, you know, and why is that? So you guys have any questions at all about Genius Hour or about?
I kind of just have a basic one, but I think you mentioned that there's kids that maybe have other interventions, and so this is not an option for them. But have we ever thought or considered maybe that this could be an option to help them with some of those things? Like so that everybody could participate or something?
So if a student is in a targeted intervention, so we have 4 cycles, and if they're in a targeted one, they're guaranteed to get out of a targeted at least once.
Okay, so they could at least once.
So everyone will have the option at least once to do it if they chose. And there's other options that they could choose to. But yeah, so everyone has the option to do it at least once.
I just want to say, as a parent of a 6th grader, my son is so excited about Genius Hour. I think he's done it 3 times. And he just, like, that and choir are the two things he continues to talk about at home with us. He loves this time. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
I feel like I'm such a slack.
Is there anyone here for public forum? Okay. 2017-18 district priorities and annual goals.
Anyone want to add to this or talk about what they have there?
So we passed the bond.
Kind of a tough act to follow with that group.
We're not going to find out about that. Remember those data points that you collected for that IPI? We don't
We were
find
gonna
out
just-
about that till the end of.
Yeah, we're gonna do that once we've got both data points. Sure that out. Yes.
Announcements and celebrations.
Anyone have any announcements or celebrations you'd like to bring forward?
I do. We had our middle school group went to the Battle of the Books, and we had a group that finished first and a group that finished second, and that's the first time that we finished first since 2008 or something like that. And so we've been close, but this is the first time we've broken through and actually won. So it's kind of a nice celebration.
I can't remember if I've shared, 2 of our teachers wrote a grant called Project Jack. I don't know if I shared this yet. And it's a grant that the Realtors Association matches or funds. And so it's just how can you write something to do something better for, that you would do something better for anybody in the state of Iowa, really. And so the 4th grade team wrote one, and they involved the students in it, and the thing that they have a reading council in 4th grade. And so they kind of leaned on the reading council, and they have come up with, they did a book drive, and so they collected kindergarten through 2nd grade age books, and took some donations and bought some cheap like bags that you can write, like fabric markers, and so the kids designed like read, smile, laugh, like some fun inspirational things, and then filled the bags, and then they are actually going to Hy-Vee Hall on Thursday for an exercise your character, and they're going to swing by 2 schools that they picked out in lower poverty need in the Des Moines public school system and donate those. And then the other one was written by Bonnie May, our ELP teacher, and her 5th grade students have been studying homelessness in central Iowa. And there's a group called JAPA, and they are working on making a tiny home village in Des Moines, and how to, they have some land secured, and so now just working through how to get tiny houses built, donated, those kind of things. And so 5th grade students are actually going on Wednesday to donate their money to the JAPA group, the tiny home village. So that's cool.
Anyone else have anything that they would like to add?
The student council hosted the dance-a-thon over the weekend and raised almost $4,000 for Lang Children's Hospital, which I think was outstanding for a group of young people to do. The pictures from the event were, there were a lot of kids involved there, a lot of kids giving and really thinking about others, and it was awesome to see a service-minded group of people going after something and being really great at it, so it's pretty awesome.
Anyone else have anything that they'd like to add for announcements or celebrations? Throughout.
Something about a maker space or something. Is that in one of the schools? I keep hearing about this maker space.
There's a new one down in Stacy's.
Is that Stacy's building?
Yeah, we talked about it, I think briefly, because they talked about, I mean.
And they got all the donations and stuff, and it sounds like it's like ready to go, right?
It's theirs, teachers using it.
They're making things in their space.
They need to make a little bit more because we have a lot of
Just a couple things to add. Last Monday I was having withdrawals for a meeting, so I went to this the city council meeting. No, I had to go because of another reason, but I went to the city council meeting. And again, we're talking with John and some of the people. I know that RAGBRAI is coming through. I put that in your school board update, and whether there will be some that want to come out to Gilbert or not, and how that will be handled. More than that, though, I want to let you know, because I think that this one could be coming up and they could be approaching us as a school district. There is a development that's going on within the district, and it's a commercial and it's a housing development. And one of the things on the commercial end of it, the developer was talking last Monday about having the opportunity to take that development for commercial and put it into a TIF. I think that we need to maybe be talking about that. I was in a district before I came here where it was a huge TIF district, and you probably read about it, some of the things that was happening there. It was more of a situation where it was a residential and a golf course and things like that, and there's some pluses and there's some minuses. But I know one of the things that they talked about at the meeting last Monday was the fact that they may want a group from our board and a group from the city to maybe get together and talk about that. So something to keep in mind. Watching the legislation, because they're talking a lot about TIF right now and about whether they will backfill and if they're going to take away the backfill and how that will all play out. I did want to also throw in, and I should have done that when it was up, that under actually the goals, the IASB 2017 financial facts are posted on the website, so if you're looking for something to read at night, you can pop that baby up and just have all kinds of things that are there. But again, when you take a look at that, not only for our website, but if you take a look at how that was used as far as when we went for the bond referendum, boy, I'll tell you, there's so many things on that it was amazing, and I think that paid off with the people as far as they were able to know what was going on. So that's
good. So on that, back to the TIF, what's the justification or the qualification for that they're basing it on?
Well, what happens is you will have a developer that will want to go ahead and do some of these things, and when it's commercial, what they want to do is they want to go ahead and they want to get their money for like the streets and things like that as quickly as they can. So what happens is there's a portion. Gail and I had some discussions on this, so I don't want to act like I'm an expert on it by any means, but there's a portion of it, and did we say it was a general fund that we would not receive the taxation off of that property?
That the valuations of that land, if they tip it, it could be 10, 15, 20 years, whatever, that agreement. And then the general fund assessed value, those dollars would not be included. It is required for the debt service piece. But
debt service, capital,
those are, but not the general funds. So ultimately, it would drive the general fund levy up because it has less valuation.
And one of the things that the city council talked about this, and again, I was just listening, they have a tax abatement, I believe, in Gilbert right now. Is that correct? And so one of the council members, I think it was Frank Riddle, had said, well, you know, if this is the case, if we have a tax abatement already, why do we need to have a TIF? And I don't know that was really answered. And again, I'm not trying to get into, you know, whether the person was right or wrong. as far as that wants the TIF, but I think that we want to be cautious for the district on how that will affect us and what will happen there.
Do you know, Lindsay or Gail, who ultimately is involved in making that decision? I mean, does the school district get a vote?
I think that we do. I don't think they can just come in and ramrod it in and say this is what's going to be. I think that the city council, one of the things that the developer kept saying was the city, you said that this is something that you want to do, then you have to support that. And I think that the city even said, well, that could have an adverse effect on the school district. So I think that we're working together as far as the city and the school. I don't think that anything's going to be pushed forward on that.
They have to have a hearing.
Yep.
So that due process.
But just be careful there, because you can pick up the Des Moines paper sometimes and read about TIF, and there's some ways that that's been done correctly, and there's some ways that hasn't been done.
So I guess my request would be just kind of clarify the process so that we know that they'd have to have a hearing, and then at what point would there be either a vote or however it gets approved, and who's involved in that.
Okay.
So I think we've had some at the county level.
Right. I was going to say I have experience at the county level, and the supervisors did that. But this is city.
Well, you're talking, yeah.
I'm assuming the city would play that role.
I'll play a big part of it. Yep.
One other celebration. There was a little vote last Tuesday night. So thanks to everybody, communication team and everything. I mean, first it was an amazing turnout, and then it was amazing positive response within that turnout. So that was very successful.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's great. Board reports. Anything board members have they'd like to report on?
I don't know if Lindsay, if you want to do a brief update. Lindsay and I met with Sam and Art this afternoon, just to kick off, well, what are we going to do in order to make sure that we're starting with the right processes and the right timelines and all. And so we just had what do you call it, the pre kickoff today. And they're going to meet with Story Construction Friday. And then Lindsay and I are going to meet with that group one more time, and then we want to have a work session, which would probably at this point be early May, to then everybody that's in this room would we'd all agree on get some alignment on, well, what's this process look like? Here's what those two groups, HALA and Story Construction, would propose as far as how to group the projects and the timing of the projects. And Lindsay's already working on a list of who would be involved with the projects, and just setting the expectations for process. In other words, well, we did the scoping already. That was that was phase 2. The scoping is done. Now we're talking about design. But we still want engagement. Lindsay emphasized several times we want engagement down to the teacher level for sure, and then out to patrons on some of these. So there'll be a couple of sessions just to make sure that we're all aligned with what that looks like, such that then hopefully we can just cut it loose and it's very transparent with what groups are doing and when, and there won't be, the thing that we emphasize too is that we absolutely want oversight with Lindsay, but we don't want that he's obligated to meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings. So I think that was pretty clear.
Yep, very much. And as administrators, I know you've already heard, because I've seen emails that have come to you and then it's been forwarded to me. Teachers are wanting to talk about what's going to happen in that classroom, what's going to be happening on that field or whatever from maybe some community members. This will help us to kind of get an idea of where we're going in a time frame for that. So I thought it was a very productive meeting this afternoon, and we got a lot accomplished. I appreciate the people coming together for that. So, and that work session, I think, will be one that you will enjoyed from the standpoint of we'll be able to talk about what are the next steps. You know, we had the hard job of getting that thing to pass, and it passed overwhelmingly. Now we want to make sure that we move it forward, and everyone, because people are going to want to know, this is April 3rd that this happened. What's going to be happening now? Where are you at with it? And we're going to try to make sure we communicate it.
Wednesday we have a follow-up or a pre-meeting with Piper Jaffray on the financial piece of it. So it looks like the timeline is that sell bonds in July, and by mid-July have proceeds with that, or part of the bonds. I don't believe that we're going to sell all 14 million at one time, but we'll be working with Travis on setting a timeline for that too. So we'll bring that forward.
Are the bond costs still in there so far? Have you heard anything? Yeah, not really. Okay.
Not heard anything.
Curious as to that's got.
Do you know it could be more advantageous or less for us as a district?
Well,
economically, I have no idea.
Interest rates have gone up, but I don't know that they've gone up at a significant level since.
All I've heard is steel prices.
Oh, for sure, yeah, so actual hard costs. You get, one thing I do want to follow up with is Carrie and Vic, did you guys go down and visit that Ed Leader? Did you guys do that visit yet?
I went to Van Meter and watched how they unveiled their portrait of a graduate.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mr. Beecher and I went to a meeting with districts, it was like 7 or 8 districts, that some of them are Ed Leader 21 members and a couple of them were not, to talk about what everyone's kind of where their next steps are. And so we have another meeting planned for beginning of May maybe. The first one was just kind of a really introduction of kind of where we all are.
And that's kind of very similar.
Very similar.
The other
to that.
groups kind of in the same same spot
really
too.
kind of so we can network together.
Okay.
On that, how do you move from good to great, and what are you doing?
Okay.
So
okay.
that's what we did.
Good, thank you. Let's see here. 2018, 2019 certified budget.
This hasn't changed since the last time we had it in here. I guess I wanted to, okay, tonight, a little bit later we're going to be doing some pre-levy payments, prepayments. And so we had the pre-levy for bonds. We've added, this is new, this line of $566,000. This is the amount that is going to be anticipated to prepay some debt. The first prepayment of debt we have in there was, I think it's $280,279. That's in the dollar amount, broken up into 4 payments of $95,000, and that's in our one of the 2 resolutions from Allers tonight. So line 7 is a change. And it's reflecting our pre-debt calculated by Piper and Allers to pay some of that. Other than that, this is what's going to, if it's approved tonight, will go to the auditors in Story County and will be effective. It's due April 15th. And so just a comparison of what it was last year and compared to this year. From the difference of the budget, the SSA, and then the dollar amount with the levy amount. And our total levy is 18.90029.
Yeah, I really appreciated that format. You know, that's very good to have it.
It's always good to make a good comparison of what are we talking about, what's increasing, what's so. Any questions, concerns about it?
You need a motion on that?
Yeah.
Entertain a motion to approve the budget. So moved. I'll have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign. The budget is approved. Thank you. Okay, the bond election results.
Unofficial. They will certify it tomorrow.
That's awesome.
All right. Yeah, that's amazing. Very Very well done, everyone.
What was our last?
Good day in Story County.
Yeah.
The high school bond, the one where we built the high school, what was the turnout for that?
It was like 742.
Yes.
Something like that. To be precise.
That would've
Just happened to have that on there.
Amy, I think, Amy, just to say this, you did a really good job leading the communication team and the effort, and
A lot of good people.
there's a lot of patrons involved too, but it took you to lead us all down a really good path, so thank
I
you.
enjoyed it. It was fun.
Oh,
I
that's
wish I could say the same.
Most
I'm just
of
kidding, it was
fun,
great.
too.
No, it was a great time.
Okay, resolution authorizing the issuance of 14 million in general obligation school
So
bonds.
in the previous, the budget that I just, in that line, for the prepayment, this is basically authorizing the resolution and the paperwork that I need to take to each county auditor in order to do that. So the resolution they would like you to pass is this resolution right here, and I also have it in the agenda.
And so there's, so the next one's about the prepayment, this one's about the school, right?
14, yeah.
Sure we don't confuse the two.
Yeah, I guess I was going to. They kind of, this one is the prepayment, then the next one is we're amending. Last year, at this time of the year, we approved a prepayment. Well, now that dollar amount is not correct. So we're amending the action of last year. And that's in the next resolution.
That's the 1403, right?
Yes.
And then and so 1402 is just to approve a resolution on this,
This
the one that
14,
was
yeah,
just
this is
passed.
the new amount, yeah.
Yeah,
And the other
so-
one is to amend the previous resolution.
So I'll entertain a motion for 1402 to approve the issuance of up to 14 million for the projects that were just voted on this month.
So moved.
You'll have a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, stands approved. And then, so the 1403 then is that we would be able to prepay on the municipal, or on the general obligation bonds that were issued in 2014, and I believe it was 780,000 in total. And
So this is what the principal will be 95,000 for these maturity dates. And this is the new prepayment.
Any questions on that?
I don't think I get it. I'm sorry.
So
I just
what
wanna
we,
make sure.
so what we did a year ago.
I'm glad John's here because.
So what we did a year ago, and you weren't here, so you wouldn't know. So we approved up in the tax levy to,
Yeah.
was it 405? And with the
Maximize
idea
the
of,
405.
at that time, we didn't know where we were gonna be at with regard to the bond issuance. So what we had to do as a function of raising that is in the meantime, we're gonna have some additional revenues to prepay bonds. So in essence, our bonds have a callable feature in them. And so we're not fully paying them off. It's kind of like making an early house payment. I'm gonna chop out a little bit more than the principal I need. And so what this resolution would do is to authorize us to actually partial call is what they call them, of 95,000 on each of those, on each of those bonds. And what you see there is those are QSIPs, and so they're the maturities of the bonds, and they give them kind of like a social security number. And so those are the social security numbers that you're seeing.
2% is the highest rate, or that's the highest that we can call at this point? Because it looked like those were at 2%. Yeah.
No, that's the interest rate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not, I'd have to look at that call feature. I'm not.
I was just confused because we just talked about the 506, whatever that I thought was a prepayment. And that's different than this.
Right, because I believe
Right,
that
that's what you said. This is an amendment of.
It works out to be 780,000.
But the other way is a new one.
We should have actually
last year.
made this, but then with the election coming up so soon, they wanted to wait to see if that was gonna pass or not.
Okay.
Otherwise,
Maybe
we would have
wouldn't
not
have-
amended it because, but since since the bond passed, then they're like, well, let's change the numbers, and so then we're
Okay.
amending the action from a year ago.
Okay.
So we're
Got it.
amending it from 566 to 70,
Okay.
if that's what 95 times.
Oh, okay, so this is an
Does that
addition
sound,
to.
is that,
I was
is
thinking it
that
was
right?
around 579, they rounded up to
Yeah.
580, or excuse
I'm
me,
with you.
280. It
That
wasn't
was my
279
line.
something, but
Sorry.
we're at 280.
Yeah.
Yikes. I was struggling there for a minute, but that makes sense.
So everybody good?
Yeah.
Entertain a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Do I
Now
have a
that I know
second?
exactly what it is, absolutely.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. Thank you. Next we have is to award the bid on the intermediate and elementary school summer renovation project.
And again, this is a letter from HALA with the recommendation that you can see in the middle of that. HPC had the base bid of $317,000. And the alternates, they had the low bids on each of those, and you can read those. I'm not going to necessarily have to read those to you. But had, I believe, there are 4 contractors that put in bids.
I have. Yes.
Okay, if you want to see.
Yep, and this is the actual bid documents, but here's the summary here.
There it is right there. So you can kind of get an idea of where the bids came in. This is a bid tab if you haven't had a chance to set through a bid opening. And you should come in and it's kind of exciting when they do this. Sometimes exciting. But anyway, you can kind of take a look and see where each of the base bids were. The alternate was the operable partition that would be in the science room in this building. And then there was also, what's the other one? Was that the
old ICM room.
Thank you. Just some of the upgrades that we would have in that. So they go through each of these and they make sure that they have all their bid bond and things like that. And then they'll go through and they'll say what it was for their base, if they had alternate 1, alternate 2. And then you can kind of take a look and see, and HPC is the one that has the low bid. Anything else to add from your perspective, Gail?
No.
I think it's nice to have that HPC is involved in this. We talked about doing some different things, whether we did a CM or a GC. This one will just be done just normally through no CM. They'll just be handling it. But my point is that we've been very satisfied with their work, and we look forward to working with them.
Any questions for Lindsay on those project bids?
Move to accept Harold Pike Construction bid for the intermediate and elementary projects, including the additional.
Thank you, Tyler. Do I have a second?
Just a second. We need the alternates.
Including the alternates, sorry.
Is
Both
CR
alternates.
classroom, I'm sorry to be like not smart about this, but it said finishes to CR. Is that classroom?
Is that the?
Yeah.
Just to make sure, that's what that means.
No
Okay.
science room.
So this is a new science room, those 2 alternates that you're talking about? Oh, yeah.
You'll have all the acronyms down by the time
By
you're
the
done.
time I'm never done, I'm never gonna have them down probably.
And Kim, did it have a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. Congratulations.
What did HALA estimate for the cost?
They're sitting at bids, he said he wanted to be under 363 total, like including the.
Yeah, the estimated bid amount was 363. Is that right?
No, I mean, like, what were they guessing?
Yeah.
When we were,
Was it-
415 is
that's what, we came in significantly under what they had
Oh,
guesstimated, right?
Because we just revised it last meeting.
Right, we did. We
I had, the range was 340,000 to 363.
That was just from last meeting?
Is that the new revised dollar amount?
Okay.
That's what he gave us at the bid.
That's what he told us
opening.
at the bid opening.
Right.
Yeah, yep, you're right.
And then the annual employee recognition, Friday, June 1st.
Just there to put on your calendar. I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to be at it last time, It's an excellent opportunity to, we're ending the year and we want to celebrate that. And if you get an opportunity to come in, you're more than welcome.
School day this
It's during the school day. I don't know the exact times, but we'll get that out to you. But something that's a positive thing.
Do you need volunteers for that?
You want to do volunteering?
No, I thought.
But last time we did.
I think you and Sean did it.
Yeah, I've done it a couple
Oh,
times.
you're.
Am I thinking of something different?
You're.
That was giving away those awards.
Did we
recognition?
And that recognition, you guys, when we did that recognition last year, we did that kind of that trivia part of it. Did we give away the awards like the?
Yeah.
That time? Yeah, so we do need some people to do that.
We went into
We
the
went into the
auditorium
auditorium.
after the fun. Yeah.
Right.
You were there, Brian.
Yeah, no, that's why I wanted to make sure. I was just gonna say, because normally we like, choose somebody to do that.
Are you volunteering?
Nope. No, I would be happy to do that.
Would anybody like to help Sean with that, or Brian?
Can I call Sean back?
Yeah.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Kim. So we got a couple
Yeah, you
of
wanna do it?
Friday.
Which Friday would it be?
June 1st.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
It's.
Oh,
yeah.
then these two said that they would love to do it together.
Oh, yeah. I
Did
didn't
you
mean
just
to
say
take
you do it?
anybody's
It's
place.
three of us.
Oh, let's go. Okay, I'm in.
It's like you can't talk
Super
about
fun.
anything.
There's food.
Yeah, we just can't talk about anything.
Next.
Keep rolling.
To approve the individual procurement card usage agreement changes, anything in there?
This is our school credit cards, and we just want to update this agreement with our current staff that have a P card, and it requires board approval. So that's why it's coming to you tonight. And you can see that the changes are crossed out, highlighted, etc. Just want to make sure that all of our employees that have a card understand the requirements and sign off and know what they are. So we are requesting these amendments to this agreement and sending out new agreements for everyone to sign.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
You'll have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. How about the agreement for the 403B plan?
I don't know if you realize this, but we are in an agreement with the State of Iowa Administrative Services. They manage all of the district's 403B, or IRA. Schools have an IRA, and we call it a 403B. And what it does is we do payroll deductions. We send it to the state of Iowa. The state of Iowa, they do RFPs for the investors and investment companies, and then they manage that. And so every year we need to update and this agreement. So it's considered a contract, so it has to come in front of the board. So that's how we do it. We don't manage it. They are our third-party administrator.
And the good news is that they're doing a lot better than other states. I looked at a municipal bond last week that was similar in size to us. Their pension liability was $92 million. It was unfunded.
And there's not a lot of administrative fees that they allow these companies to have. So it may not, a lot of them don't even do an RFP because it's not real profitable for them, because they're really limited on their administrative fees.
Yeah, if it was only $400, that wouldn't take you very far. Entertain a motion to approve this agreement.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. Let's see, review the high school course enrollment data.
That's me. Hooray. Not really, hooray.
Earlier in the year, I think it was in November, we took a look at some disaggregated data, but one of the things that we need to do is we need to look at it by subgroups. And so what we did is we're looking at it by gender, because really our other groups, we don't have big enough groups to pull apart any other way. So what we did is we are looking at our course offerings, at our higher level course offerings, to see how are they gender-wise. So when you say, well, at higher level, now you're looking at the middle school. Well, we do have some algebra and geometry classes that are at the middle school, if those students have qualified for them. Because if they've met the qualifications, we offer that. Actually, you know, we have 6th graders that might be taking 7th grade math, or we've actually, depending on where those students' needs are in math, we're able to offer those classes for them. So as you can see, by looking at the graph, the red group is always going to be the females, and the males are always going to be blue. So here we are looking at this, like I said, this is just the middle school group, and we have right now 47 students that are taking algebra at the middle school, and proportionately we have a higher group amount of females than males in that, which is, you know, kind of interesting amongst itself. Then we look at the geometry section, which you have to take algebra before you can take geometry. So we have 8 students at the middle school who are taking geometry, and of those 8, 5 of them are females. So if you look at that, you'd say, wow, you know, we actually have more females at the middle school level that are taking a higher mathematical class. So we can go to the next slide.
Great. What's just the general breakdown of the classes? You know what I mean? Are there more 7th grade girls than boys? Or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah, give me a second. I can be up front.
I just wondered if
So while he's looking at that, I'm gonna continue on with this. Now, I know we're talking about higher level, but I wanted to pull this out because at the high school level, we do have some math support that we offer. So we've got the geometry lab class, and what that is it's like a second hour where the students have access to that geometry teacher. And right now, oh, better turn my page here. We have 11 students that are taking part in that, and of those 11, it's pretty equal, 6 females to 5 males. So it's pretty equal in that respect. Then we have applied math, and applied math, the prereq to taking applied math is you have to have taken geometry, but it's for those kids that going from geometry to advanced algebra is going to be tough. And so it gives them a cushion of time to work through that advanced algebra, and they could, maybe after they take the applied math, they can take advanced algebra, because they're not going to get an advanced algebra credit for it, but they just need more time. They're just not quite there yet. And as you can see, of those kids, right now, we only have 10 kids that are taking that class right now, but of those 10, 8 are males and 2 are females.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So, Deb, to answer your question, in 6th grade, there are 70 boys, 64 girls. 7th grade, there are 60 boys, 72 girls. 8th grade, there are 56 boys and 60 girls.
So we're really
So middle school is 186 boys, 196 girls total.
So really close.
Yeah, real close. I just wanted to.
And the thing of, yeah, so now, so we've seen that where, and then here, okay, now we're going to go to advanced algebra, and you have to have taken geometry to get into advanced algebra. We've got 108 kids that are taking advanced algebra this year. 57 of them are girls, 51 of them are boys. So it's pretty equal. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Next slide. Math electives after advanced algebra. So you can take math applications, and right now we only have 9 students taking that class. 6 of them are female and 3 of them are male. We also have a stat class you can take. 24 students are taking that. We have 11 female, 13 male, which is pretty equal. But then, now if you want to get into the next, I mean, and that's after advanced algebra, but now our next level will be AP Calc or advanced math, and this is where we see a higher proportion of males. So in those classes, right now we have 66 students enrolled in advanced math, 26 are female and 40 are male. And in AP Calc, 38 students are enrolled in that, 11 are female and 27 are male. So now, the thing that we don't know are some of those females that we know went through advanced algebra, they went through that whole thing. Are they, and after having some discussions, Mr. Martinick actually has been looking at the same thing, the same question after we put this, I mean, and he asked our, has asked our instructional coach Jen in the high school to do some looking at this. Not from this, but it was just a side conversation after I was looking at this. So is this something that is, that we, I mean, it's something that we're going to want to continue to look at now. Because is it something that's just this year, or is it our girls are taking math, are they taking a DMAC math? I mean, this are the kids that are enrolled here. So are they taking a DMAC class, or are they taking something at Iowa State, or are they nervous about taking our math, so they're taking the applications or they're taking the stat, thinking that, I don't know. So it's something that we could delve into a little bit more. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right, so that's our math.
I have a question.
Oh, go right ahead.
Sorry, this is super fascinating stuff. Is the goal that we would continue to have kind of a breakdown that represents our normal demographic in our school across these classes?
Say that, like,
so we're like, oh wow, why all of a sudden are we looking at AP Calculus and that graph looks different than the other?
Yeah, that's what I'm like. I was just like, when I thought, okay, look at how we've seen girls. In middle school, we saw more girls. And now it's like, whoa, that's interesting that all of a sudden now a significantly less amount of girls are taking that class.
It'd be interesting too to see what they thought their college aspirations were.
Yes.
And what was required.
That's very true too.
For their particular major.
Yes, because that's going to come up in science also.
That's the next, that'll make a little more sense.
Yes. So then we looked at science. So now we've got 9th and 10th grade honors science. So you can see right now in honors physical science, and that's in 9th grade, we have 27 students enrolled, 13 females, 14 males, very equal. Honors biology is 10th grade. We have 10 females, 9 males, very equal. And there's certain criteria to get into that class. They have to have a certain grade point average, and they have to have had a certain ranking on Iowa assessments and NWEA. But then, when we start looking at, as we move forward, and after 9th and 10th grade, they've got different electives that they can take. But when you look at your upper level, so now we look at chemistry. There's 118 students right now enrolled in chemistry. Of those 118 kids, 49 are female and 69 are male. In physics, we have 30 students enrolled in physics. 12 are female and 18 are male. Go to the next slide.
Do those have entrance requirements as well?
No, they do not.
Okay.
But no, they do not have entrance requirements.
Other than to be
they have to be juniors.
Yeah.
But then look at anatomy and physiology. Here, that's another upper level class. 42 students are enrolled in this one. 29 are female and 13 are male. So is it what we were what somebody brought up earlier, is it your career path that is driving this decision, which very well could be, but it's not that girls aren't taking certain courses, but I mean, I think it's something that we need to keep an eye on and that we need to continue to look at, but I think it's something to ask our students too.
Yeah.
So we can go on to the English now. All right, so now honors English. There is, in 9th grade honors English, we have 44 students in that class. So here we have 27 females and 17 males. And then in 10th grade honors English, we have 30 total. We have 21 females and 9 males. Now there is a requirement that has to do with reading comprehension score on our Iowa assessments, and then you have to have a certain grade point. But if students are on the bubble on that, they can talk to the instructor and have a conversation about depending on where they are on those requirements. So there is I don't want to say wiggle room, because I hate to use that term, but you can have a conversation as to why you should be in it. That can't happen in the honor science. It's very hard and fast. Now when we look at English 11 and 12, now these are the classes where you're only getting the DMAT credit, where you're going to get the DMAT credit. For English, for the DMAC Lit 101 and a Lit 111, and that's the 11th grade, you can see that it's equal. There's 25 students in there, 12 of them are females, 13 of them are males, and the DMAC Comp, which is the senior level, there's 34 females and 27 males. 61 kids are taking that class. So, I mean, you have 3 choices when you are in that grade, when you're 11 or in the juniors or seniors. You can take just regular English 11, you can take the DMAC credit, or you can take AP. So you can see, you know, that's pretty equal. And then the last slide has to do with our AP course offering. Here we have, for AP English 11, we have 17 kids, and 9 of them are female and 8 of them are male. And then for AP English 12, we only have 5 students in it this year. 3 of them are females and 2 of them are males. So the English itself, 11 and 12, is pretty equal. We did see a little bit of difference in the honors 9 and 10, but not in the upper level 11 and 12 classes. Now, I think that one thing to know is we, as we look at the AP, this is our second year of the English AP classes, and we did decide that this year that if we didn't have a certain number, we were not gonna, I mean, like 5 is a really small class. We were not gonna offer the class, but we had enough to register, so we'll offer both classes next year. So we have a bigger class than, I think, what is it for the senior class, for the next year right now? Do you remember that?
I was thinking the senior group was like right around 13 to 15.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So we said,
big improvement.
Yeah, that is a big improvement. So, anyway, I think that it's interesting, but I think it is important that we continue to look at those numbers and make sure that, you know, if there's a disparity there, is it just, you know, just happens to be maybe that year, or do we see a trend? And that's something we need to keep an eye on. So,
when you said before that some of those courses were very strictly based off of you have to have this test score, you know, the more black and white ones, then that's just to be eligible to take that class, right? Then they make the choice. I'm going to take this or
yes,
this.
you don't have to say it, yes. The student and the family, the students and the parents have that decision. So if I meet the requirements and I decide, let's say I say no, I don't want to take that. I'm going to, hopefully, you know, I'm going to talk to my parents because I'm going to be, you know, you have to sign off on my stuff. But yes, that is a decision that I can, or yeah, that is a decision to sign up for that class or not.
Because if the scores were such that they were more equal, you know,
yes,
and then the girls or the females were just simply making a different choice, maybe due to career aspirations or other reasons. I was just curious.
Yeah, no, and that's like the
or whether it was more of a choice thing.
Yeah, it is more. It is. So maybe like with the English, when we had more females taking the English, honors English, maybe it's because the boys at that choice decided they didn't want to take that.
Right.
That's true.
Maybe they're in an honors science program and they just
yeah,
don't want to deal with all that stress.
That could be very well too.
Lots of different reasons. I think I think it's just interesting, and what you can learn about it. I don't think that there's anything that would be like a red flag kind of thing. It's more just I wonder kind of.
I came away with it more I wonders. I came away with more I wonders and thinking, you know, this is something that we need to just keep looking at over time to see, are there trends that we're seeing, and asking questions of our students. So.
Yeah, those other jobs tend to be higher paying careers.
So
you know,
I appreciate the data. I would encourage, like you did with us verbally, is to provide the N, because in some of those, when it's 6 or 9 in a class, the ratios are kind of meaningless. But when you get to the bigger classes, that's important. And I do think it's interesting, but I would also ask, well, what are we going to do with it, if anything, and if not, then. Okay.
I think it's one of those things, and we have to have these discussions. I mean, we have to, it's a requirement that we are by the state to share this out. So, I mean, you have the option to say, you know what, I think you should be doing such and such. Or it's also to say, you know what, right now, we need to look at it, we need to know this, and then we need to continue to have these conversations, or to continue to to look at it to see if we do see a trend.
Are there, sorry, were you gonna?
No, I just to emphasize on, you know, we're gonna look at ratios, let's make sure we know the context, so that we know the denominator, we know the end. Because then I just encourage us not to make too big of conclusions based on small numbers, which that's probably why we don't have any of the other statistics in here, right?
Yeah, and that's why I think the one I pointed out would be the science ones, because I mean, when there's a difference of 20 students, just with how small we are, I mean, that can be a section to me. That is a big difference. So, but what I'll do is I will put those back in for you, and I will resend that to you.
The question for the board would just be in certain of those higher level courses, do we need to be more intentional about
the offering and ensuring?
Yeah, that if we feel like it's important for more males or females to be in that career field, then we want to be intentional about, hey, we just raised the profile of it to it. So like my daughter Liza's in the STEM stuff and did the engineering stuff at Iowa State, and so they're just upping the profile to say, hey, we have a place at Iowa State University if you're interested in an engineering field. And so really that, I think, is the question before us, is that we see what we would consider underrepresentation, we might want to raise the profile of it if we think it's worthwhile as administrators and the board.
But to Carrie's point, well, we don't necessarily have the whole story because of these other offerings, right? So it really need to be.
And I'd need to see a 5-year trend of it.
Yeah.
I think some schools would see something even at this level that would cause them to be concerned. I don't see anything here at this level for us, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, to your point, this is an exercise that all schools should do to make sure they don't have inequities in various, you know, segments of their school. So I think it's encouraging. I'm just curious. That's the only thing that I am. I'm just curious because I'd just like to know if it was, they just want to do something different. Great. And that's a different thing than I didn't really feel like it was for me. You know, it's just a different thing.
No, I think that's more what I was thinking. I was thinking, as I was looking, I'm like, as I was counting, I'm like, oh, I wish there was a couple young girls. But no, it could be, I mean, we do have a number of students that are going off-site to take things. And it could be that they're doing something that way. So
maybe even just an exit survey in the school year. You know, why did you choose what you chose, and you know, were you happy with your choice?
Well, and we are going to be doing a survey on ideas for class electives in different departments in the next week or two, hopefully, on that, just to get student input on that also. So anyway, I will add those though, Tyler, and get that back to you.
I was as like, I know this wasn't the purpose of what Carrie was saying, but I was like you mentioned, oh, there's only 5 people in that class, or
I know.
oh, there's only 9. That was kind of the one that was. But it changes from year to year, I'm sure.
This is for the cross-country course.
Oh, we need an action. Carrie needs action for that. You need approval on the agenda.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
For the
So
state.
we'll submit that to the state.
The review of a high school portion.
That we reviewed it.
We're accepting
Thank
the
you.
report.
Yeah. Agenda.
Got a first from Brian, do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. The cross-country, entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. Need to entertain a motion to approve post-speech meter agreement with Pitney Bowes.
Oh, what leader?
So moved.
There's a forceful one. I need a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. And we got on the last one.
This is the one
Okay, so this warrants a little bit of discussion. There's talk down in Des Moines about doing away with the backfill for the rollback in commercial property taxes. And so we have a proposed resolution here that essentially says replace the funding for the funds that are going to be rolled back potentially if this proposed legislation goes through. So we had the discussion, you know, is it appropriate at the school board level to get involved in political issues, and kind of the thought from my own personal perspective is if it involves funding that could be potentially taken away from the schools, I think we our voice heard in that matter. So does anybody have any strong feelings about the resolution or want to propose approval of the resolution?
I think it's our responsibility.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just think that, you know, at some point it's much beyond this, right? I mean, it's a collective discussion and then down to Des Moines, and so this is good, but the direction that it's headed is something that we need to be even stronger in our voice.
Do we ever consider like gathering? I know Ames stands to lose 1.3 million or something next year. I know they're very concerned about it. Do we ever band together with some other area schools and go down or anything like that, just to make a bigger show?
We have had in the past like a legislative night that we've done through Story County. We did not do that this year, but that's kind of a way to band together because you know your voice. You're one school board, you're one school board member, whatever you want to say. But if we can, you know, combine our strength in numbers and go down there and say, well, this is Story County, and we feel that this is something that we want you to listen to, is a plus.
Okay. And that usually gets some press.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So, all in favor of the resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. Entertain a motion to approve the postage meter agreement.
Oh, we already had that.
We did that one. Oh, we had to back up. Well,
Yeah.
That was the emphatic.
Yeah, I was so excited about
yeah,
this.
I thought we had, but I
Brian
thought
nailed
maybe I
it.
didn't get it finished.
Our current postage
Oh,
meter
there we
is
go.
obsolete. Can you believe that? In 5
That's
years?
why I was so excited about the new one.
Financial reports, is there anything you'd like to discuss on that?
Yeah, this is pretty well in my report. I've written out some areas, and so, but I do want to draw attention to, it's been an expensive year on utilities, and so with the first,
Snow removal.
yeah, and we're not over our line item, you know, so that's a good thing. But we are higher. What caught my attention was right here, the 16,742, and I'm like, whoa, okay, so you know we're way under budget, and then all of a sudden we're over on. So it's like, okay, so I dug into it, and you saw it. I included it in the detail, but digging into it, it is. So the conclusion I have is purchase services and snow removal is $13,125 more than a year ago. Repairs and building maintenance is $12,600 higher, and ground maintenance is $3,200. So just in those three areas of buildings and grounds and maintenance, you know, we're at almost $30,000 more than a year ago. And then underneath it is our supplies. You know, here's the purchase service, and then down here is the supplies, are two areas of concerns in the buildings and grounds. And our supplies, our usage is down, but our natural gas is $4,000 more, and our electricity is almost $54,000 more than a year ago. So overall, those three areas, or two areas, are about $56,000 or $57,000 more than a year ago.
Silly question, are the prices going up or are we using more?
I thought you said our usage went down. Did you just?
No, excuse me, supplies overhaul. So you're just looking at natural.
You're talking about gas.
So
Electricity.
yeah, I'd have to, I don't know for sure, but you know, we had such a cold spell in December. Snow removal has been, you know, we got hit later.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll catch up on the mowing side of it. You know, a shorter season. I don't know. But I thought it was interesting that, you know, if you take those into consideration, those expenses, you know, we're really only at 1.83% compared to a year ago on expenditures, because those are out of our control, right?
Yep.
So.
Well,
electricity dealing with heating and cooling?
Heating and cooling.
Well, all electrical too, right?
Lights.
Could be everything.
Light, well, that's my question, I guess, is, I mean, if it was because it was a cold winter, I wouldn't think electricity would be up, right?
Well, I'm not sure how we're made.
And your building is, do you have a lot of heat?
Baseboard heat.
Is yours electrical heat?
I don't think there was.
Yours-
right?
We have it, it's never operational.
Oh, okay. So then that leads me to another question. I want to report back to you
Hey, we passed
on
fixing
the
that.
consumptions of what the
Yeah,
price
I
and the
could
consumption.
be wrong, but I wouldn't think electricity would be related to heat in
Okay.
our district, but. So
But that's-
why
that-
it's up that
Yeah.
much would be a question.
Absolutely. So that requires more. But anyway, I will check back on the difference between the consumption and the price. And we know what the snow removal is, but
Yeah.
so those were the.
The other question is, was last year an anomaly and it was just everything was, you know, cheaper due to whatever reasons, and I have no idea.
So anyway, that's the what I dug into deeper this time. But
Any of the heating
other than that,
Okay, thank you, Gil. And this is normally where we'd say if there was anybody in the public wanting to discuss any of these issues, we would. But since there aren't any, we'll dispense with that. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Make sure no one paying attention.
Yeah, well, should we just wrap this up then?
Yeah.
All right.
By saying, I'll move.
Yes, so consent agenda, everyone else in the meeting?
I got a first.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda item?
Did you say that?
No. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. And we are to the calendar. And I know, oh sure, go ahead.
One of the things that we talked about today in our meeting was we would like to have a work session between tonight and our next regular board meeting. That would be the one where we could go and take what the next steps would be for our construction project. So I don't know if you're looking.
All of us or just board?
Board and administrative team.
Could we just?
Wasn't that right, Tyler?
Yep, but I think they were gonna when they get together Friday, they were gonna throw out some dates. for us
Okay.
next
That's right,
month.
that's right. So maybe hold off and we'll give you some dates.
And, yeah, likely to be the first or second week in May, it sounds
Right.
like.
Yep.
Would it be possible maybe if we're going to have a lot of these meetings to continue to do what we did tonight and just start at 5 with a work session prior to our board meeting?
We talked about that on this one. They don't recommend it because you're going to be talking about so much, but yeah, we can try to do that.
Okay.
Does that work out pretty well? So you're not tying up another night, possibly?
Yeah.
It's just nice when all 5 of us can be here.
Yes.
And I think that when we start forming random days that we have that
That's a good point.
opportunity that we can't be.
I'd rather probably start an hour even earlier than we did tonight than have another night, if that's what you're saying.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And then April 16th, we have a meeting at what time? That's at
I think 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yep.
6 p.m. Is that it?
14th for our next one, May.
Yes.
Graduation, 27th. You have some assignments for that yet?
Anybody feeling so led? You got a graduate.
I wouldn't mind doing the welcoming, yeah.
Okay, all right, that sounds good by me. And I
Someone else
can,
needs to finish.
I can do the close, I got one too, so.
That's awesome.
Unless somebody wants in.
We've got the recognition night.
I don't have one.
It's all right. Well, that's just darn
Take
good.
everything in between.
Just darn good teamwork right there. Not gonna lie. Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn if there's no further. Have a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, we stand adjourned.
Executive session.
Yes, executive session.
I'm still in tonight, I'll raise my hand.
Oh, I'll turn that thing on.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you for coming.
7:25.
Look at that.
Yeah, is that bad?
No, I just, that was nice.
Yep.
Yours.
Stacy, I don't think we're going to be very long.
That's okay, I'll just hang out.